So I'm Charles Boyd. I'm the creative director for Star Wars: The Old Republic, which pretty much just means I oversee kind of the story and the design aspects of the game, like how it plays and how it feels, and is it Star Warsy and all that kind of stuff. So I feel very lucky to do that, and I'm excited to talk about Manaan and anything else today.
Well, I'm very excited to have you in this interview and very excited about Manaan because we are going back to Manaan. It's been so many years. Like, what was it? Like Shadows of Revan?
Yeah, it was in the sort of prelude to Shadow of Revan. The Forged Alliances storyline was the last time that we went there in the story, and of course we have the Manaan stronghold, which kind of is there all the time. But yeah.
Yeah, I have many questions, so I will just start right at the beginning because we're going to talk about Manaan 7.0. What makes Manaan, this planet, so unique for 7.0? Why, can you tell us something without going into spoilers? Like, why are we going back and what can we expect from Manaan?
Yeah. I think, it's what has always been special about Manaan, right, is the resource, Kolto, right? They have this healing liquid called Kolto that everyone needs. It's the best medicine in the galaxy. It's the best way to win a war, or at least keep fighting a war. And which, of course, we are always doing in, in the Old Republic between the Sith Empire and the Galactic Republic. It is a Star War, as promised. Yeah, everyone needs it. Everyone wants it. And Manaan is the only place to get it. So they have the locals, the Selkath, have to carefully guard it and try to keep both sides happy and sell just enough that no one feels like they're at a disadvantage, but still not messing with them too much.
So with the Selkaths guarding the cult, so are they still neutral? Because we most of us have been playing Knights of the Old Republic, and we know about the history of the neutrality of the Selkath. Right. Is it gonna be a big thing in a storyline?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they try very hard to stay neutral. Of course, as we've shown in some of the previews we've done, the Empire is invading. They've decided they're not getting as much as they ought to be, so they're just going to come in and take it, which tends to push the Selkath the other direction. But they certainly don't like being invaded. They certainly are going to fight hard, but that doesn't mean that they're suddenly the Republic's best friends either. They know, from their perspective, everyone just wants the Kolto. No one actually cares about them. And so they're still not.
They aren't very happy. They aren't very happy about that.
No, well, and they know that if the Empire invades, then the Republic's going to show up to fight the Empire, and it's just gonna, it's going to be a lot.
So this is actually a story that you have written, and this is a question that I want to ask about your creative involvement with Manaan.
Yeah.
And the writing, what is your day-to-day, what you can tell about, because you're the creative director. What was the push, of obviously Kolto to go back to Manaan and not say, for example, on other planets?
Yeah. So, in truth, we actually had planned to do a slightly different planet. We were thinking about doing a new creation for this one, and it was going to be a different resource, because kind of in the grand scheme of the plot, right? Battling for resources, this war has been going on for a very long time. Those have been kind of continuing ideas, and so we kind of wanted to do a place that really honed in on that. But I had seen so much love from the fans for Manaan over the years, right? Everyone kept so many posts on the internet and Twitter and Reddit and everything saying, "Oh, I wish we could go back to Manaan. Oh, it'd be cool to see Manaan again." And so I thought, you know what, let's take this opportunity and do that. So let's make it Manaan. Let's go back, but let's try to have it be a different take, right? Let's make sure it doesn't just feel like the same thing over again. Which is why we kind of went with this more war-torn invasion kind of storyline. We're there, it's nighttime, it's storming, there's anti-aircraft fire and explosions and stuff. It's a very, Manaan is usually so peaceful and serene and very almost strict, right? Because the Selkath are so strictly neutral. It's like if you spit your gum on the sidewalk, you'd be executed or something. They're very tight about it. So it's a very different, this will be a very different view on the planet. In terms of the storyline, I'm very involved in sort of guiding it from a high level and kind of helping with the initial ideas. But then the actual writing team did, all the dialogue and storylines and kind of found ways to hone in on some of the characters and conflicts, to kind of not just have it be about the big war, but also about how do the characters interact with each other, what are their motivations, and how does this giant conflict sort of reflect something more personal or interesting.
That's really cool, and it's like this is mind blowing that you actually decided to go with Manaan because many people have been asking, and it's a
Yeah.
question that I want to ask. Like, are it's like is it going to be an open world? Is it going to be into like are we going back to like Atto Plaza? I think I butchered that name completely, but
No,
will we
that's it.
see
Yeah,
some like
that's how I would
completely?
say it.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
are there so like are we going back to places that we already know because we're gonna get a different take and then we're gonna be like there at war, like I said at nighttime? What can
Right.
we expect?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, so these are new areas. So we're not going the plaza that was used for the flashpoint will still be there as it is. So this is a new sort of elevated part of Manaan that is kind of resurfaced. They sank all of and submerged all of their cities in the backstory before even the last time we visited in game. And so at some point between then and now, they've raised a few more platforms to sell a little more Kolto, and that's what the Empire has managed to invade. In terms of the experience of like playing through it, it's definitely like surface area. It's bigger. It's more like an Onderon or an Osis. I couldn't tell you it's like square footage is the exact same because it's a very different type of planet, right? It's all ocean and stuff. So you're moving on very specific platforms or through corridors or things like that. So it's in terms of how you experience it, it's maybe more similar to maybe some of the chapters we did in Fallen Empire and Eternal Throne in terms of, it's very directed. It's not open terrain that you can just freely run across the way Onderon is, say. Maybe Mekshah is a good example, right? Like you have very particular routes you can take because otherwise you're plummeting through space. So it's kind of the same thing, right? It's just endless ocean that all around you. So it's kind of the design of the planet is such that it is a different experience of running through it. And there is, for the story's sake, there is a lot of instancing and stuff to kind of really get into some of those actiony moments that we want to convey. But yeah, it's definitely it's a larger planet experience. It's not like I don't know. I'm trying to think of it. Anyway.
Like that's pretty cool, but then the other question really straight up pops into my mind because you said like about multiple platforms, like and with instance, like how will you travel there? Because I have so many people seen asking about can we walk underwater or like how to travel and those things. Like, can you tell us something about that, or is this just gonna be speeders and yeah?
Yeah, so there will be speeder taxi type things as we usually do. I don't want to say exactly, but yes, you will revisit the bottom of the ocean. Not in the same way as in KOTOR, but in a way. So it's definitely, that's not like the main experience or anything, but you will get to go back, just like the concept art you have for your background there.
Okay, that is pretty good. Yeah,
there will be a little bit of below the sea action for sure that I think players are really going to enjoy. It's the art team's really outdone themselves on this one, so
that's absolutely awesome. Like, the ultimate question I really want to know is like, okay, are we gonna do it? But it's absolutely incredible. And about visiting places, I got myself a little list over here. So for locations, like how will, like you spoke about like the instances and like platforms, but like for like if you're gonna talk about like KOTOR, like but will we return to Rocket Rift?
Not directly. I'd have to see if anyone, in terms of the specific geography, I don't think anyone has ever actually like drawn a specific map that says the Racket Rift is at these coordinates on a map and this is over here or anything. Star Wars tends to play a little fast and loose.
Because it was mentioned.
We're not going specifically, but there are certain elements like Kolto mining mostly happens near the Racket Rift. Certain other elements are meant to be around there. So I would say we are near it, but in terms of geographically, but you won't like, it's not the abyss where you're going to literally scuba dive into the Racket Rift or anything in this update anyway. So
okay.
We'll, let me know if y'all really want that Racket Rift.
Yes.
maybe the next time we bring Manaan back, we'll be all in a giant canyon.
Now, but that was a question that I had, like after reading like the internet, like there's been a giant ass article on the internet, and can you tell us a little bit more about it? Because this is like really like a throwback on the Imperial take on it. But how's like the Republic been, and overall, like what can we take from this article and translate it to where we are going right now?
Yeah, so they're kind of the main goal of the article was as a sort of refresher, right? Because it has been both in-game years, but also in real life years. It's been a long time since we went to Manaan, and so we wanted to be sure to kind of give a little refresher of like, hey, what all was going on there? What was the situation with the Selkath? How did they feel about everyone? and cover a little bit of stuff that might have happened off screen, right? Like the kind of increasing trade again, having a little more involvement in the galactic community. And also, to show some of the perspective from the Empire and the kind of lead up to them choosing to invade, right? Which is partly why we chose the Darth Azarian intelligence kind of direction to present it, because they are a little more cautious, a little more measured in their analysis. So it gives a more neutral point of view, something you can more rely on to be factual. Mostly it was to kind of help remember some of the places so that when you come back, you can remember all the events of the past. There are definitely elements in there that will be making an appearance, like the special warfare group that's mentioned. That'll be particularly in the Republic storyline. You'll be interacting with them. Certainly it talks a lot about KOTOR, as it always does, right? So that's obviously a key part of both storylines. Some of the interaction between the military and the Sith, and what's that relationship like now, as opposed to maybe in the past, or how is it developing over time for the Empire side.
Well, that's really interesting, and it's mostly speaking about like the military aspect, but especially like there are multiple like spheres in the Empire, and with KOTOR it's like medical, but there's also like the other spheres of like research and science. Will those also get like an appearance a bit in the story?
This one's pretty focused on military and on logistics, right? Because KOTOR is an important supply, so it's really mainly focused on the one. But you can, between the short story and the actual story, you'll definitely see a difference in tone of the Sith involved. So in that way, yeah, you get some contrast between what Darth Azarian is like versus some of our characters in the story. But yeah, it's pretty focused on the one, because it's really focused on kind of that Sith and his relationship with kind of the military troops that they're working with to try to do this invasion.
Okay, so another question, because we have like the Sith and the Republic, but there are also force-wielding Selkath in the story. The Order of Sasha? Yeah. Will we see them, and will they have an impact to the story? Because they've been quite important also in the Shadows of Revan.
Yeah. So no, there's no Order of Shasa people directly in 7.0. So not a key part of this one, but I've always thought they were really cool. So I wouldn't be surprised if you don't maybe hear more about them later, but not as part of this storyline.
And then I have someone. We're really going really fast through the questions right now. I was not expecting that. But like another question that I have not thought of, but just popped into mind, because it's going to be fighting. Is there also going to be like a Flashpoint Titan to that, or anything like that? Like, or is it more going to be like storyline? Like, what can you tell us about more? Because we talk about like instances, but anything you can tell about that?
Yeah, it's more single player storyline. Again, similar to Onderon, Mekshah, Osis, some of the planets we've been doing lately. The flashpoint that'll be going with 7.0 is on another planet called Elom that will be visiting. It'll take place after Manaan. So there's not a flashpoint. There are going to be some repeatable missions and stuff set on Manaan coming down the road,
like a daily area or like heroics and those things. There's so many questions that I can also think about, and especially this is like with a creative challenge, because there's so many things that you said, like, okay, there's not going to be like the Order of Sasha directly involved, but what have been some creative challenges that you've had while working on Manaan that you can talk about? Because there are so many decisions that you need to make. Like, what is it that you were like, oh, I wish I could do this, but it didn't happen? Or that you were like, I want to put this in, and you actually got it in?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing we got in is kind of a spoiler, so I can't tell you, but I'm very pleased that one big returning element all the way back from KOTOR is making an appearance. So that'll be a fun surprise, hopefully, when y'all get in there. Honestly, like, we went in with a pretty good idea of what we wanted to do, and I feel like we were able to do it. Anytime we actually ran into a roadblock, I feel like the alternative ended up being even cooler. I know that's maybe sounds cheesy, but like, for example, some of the bottom of the ocean stuff actually ended up, I think, being cooler because we said, hey, we want to do this, and I was like, that's not working out so well. What if we did this? And I'm like, oh, that's even cooler. Why don't we just do that? So hopefully when y'all get in there, you won't even know that it was going to be something different, because what's in there is even cooler than it's it's a nice part about working with a team, right? Just because I have an idea doesn't mean it's the best one.
You can just throw ideas at each other and you just bounce off each other, and that's really really cool. And another thing that I've been thinking, and I think also many roleplay, I think it's a roleplay community question, but it is what's currently the timeline that we are right now between the latest story update and until we are going to Manaan? Because I think that there are people who are like having a little bit of a trauma with like a 5-year gap. Will we have like a time skip between this or no?
No, not a significant one. I think I had mentioned earlier in the year with Secrets of the Enclave that we're still in, and I've got to check my notes. Sorry, I'm bad at remembering dates.
Notes are
27 years after the Treaty of Coruscant, or 3,626 years before the Battle of Yavin and A New Hope. So we're still in that same year as we were in game, as in Secrets of the Enclave, Spirit of Vengeance, Echoes of Oblivion. All of that is still kind of within the same year. We might be kind of getting toward the end of that year in terms of in-game activity, but still that same year. So it's been, I think, 11 years of in-game time. For the player, it's been 6 because they were frozen for 5, like you mentioned. So from their perspective, 6 years of in-game time, but 11 total years since we first went to Manaan in Forged Alliances.
It sounds like a really buzzy year if you think about like everything that came out is all in the same year. Like, oh my goodness. It's like, yeah, but it's a really cool, like it's really interesting to think about it.
Yeah, it's fun to, again, as bad as I am at remembering dates, it's fun to think about. Like, what I love about this game and about the storyline is that it does kind of span this long stretch of time, and it really feels like your characters are growing and changing, and the galaxy is growing and changing as we continue to go. It's rare for a story to continue that long and cover that much ground. So it's cool to kind of have that sense of time passing and growing and changing.
Is this also something that you with your team also think about when writing a story? It's like, how are we going to time frame it, and how are we going to bring it to the play? Because I think it's pretty confusing with some players who are coming into the game, and for example, they will see SWTOR in the trailer. She's really young, and if you currently go into like Fallen Empire, she's like way older.
Right.
How does the team go about that?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Like I've said on the forums, it's Star Wars almost never gives a specific time frame. It's certainly not in the films. They almost never say how long it's been from anything that's happened. Timelines are sort of established outside the movies, and even then, they're pretty general, right? Like, we're like, this is in this year and this is in the following year, but like, is a year in Star Wars 12 months? Is a month 4 weeks? Like, I mean, I think so, but I think they go off Coruscant time, which is coincidentally the same as ours. But like, I think someone might have at some point established days of the week and what they're called, but like, that's just not Star Wars, right? It just doesn't care really about that kind of specifics. It's as much fairy tale as it is science fiction, and so we try not to get hung up on it either. Like, there needs to be a sense of time, right? Because characters are relative ages from each other. Time, it has been this many years since you talked to so-and-so, your relationship needs to be different. These are important factors, and it's not that it doesn't matter, but yeah, we just try not to make it too critical that the exact timeline either, because it's not about that. It's about the characters and the relationships and the drama. And
it's about the story. Like, that's what makes really like Star Wars really, like, I think it's one of the best parts of SWTOR is like the storytelling. Like, there are many other games out here, but seeing it, everything is voice acted, and it's just, I think it's one of the best story points of the game.
Thank you. Yeah, we really enjoy doing it.
It's one of the best things that I think the game has. And also thinking back, there have been parts where they went back into like Knights of the Old Republic, where they had not voice lines, where it was like this cutscenes and you had to click on it.
We mostly use those for more minor or side stories, right? Where we're either it's repeatable. So, I think going back to a slightly higher level, something that I felt like we saw with the core game when we first put it out was that when everything was at that level of cinematic, and you had 5 missions in your log and they were all presented with the same way, it kind of became easy to forget which was which and lose track a little bit. So I think that having some of them be a little simpler helps to say, okay, this is a secondary story. This is its own thing that's separate from that big, gigantic, flashy scene that you just saw. And so it can kind of help, and especially if it's like a repeatable mission, right? Like even the coolest scene ever made, you don't want to see it every day for for the rest of your life. It gets you kind of get tired of it. So it's good to kind of simplify the presentation for things like that.
That was really thought behind. Like, I always thought that you guys did it because, like, with a throwback to Knights of the Old Republic, but never thought there was a really thought behind it.
Yeah, that was, the thought was, how do we kind of make this obviously different but still kind of cool? Okay, well, let's make it as a reference to that.
And it worked out really well. About earlier in the interview about, like, with Manaan and the Stronghold and all those things, but will we get something more for the Stronghold? Because of course we're going back to Manaan, and I don't know if you're usually you know those things, but one thing that players really like is fashion and decorating. And will the players get more things for the Strongholds, outfits? What can you tell us about that?
So I can't say anything specific yet, but that certainly seems like a good bet, right? Like if we're going to spend a lot of time on Manaan, we're making all of these new cool things as part of revisiting the planets, and typically those new cool things make their way to players as decorations or outfits or what have you. So seems like a safe bet. We'll put it that way.
A safe bet. That's a very good answer. And it was actually my last questions, but what has you most excited for 7.0 and Manaan? Like all the things, without going into spoilers, but what has you really excited?
Well, like you said, there's one kind of big element that we got to bring back from some of the older stuff that it's a bit of a spoiler.
You will see in a few months from this interview.
I'm just teasing so much. I'm sorry, but I think people will be a little pleasantly surprised, and it'll be pretty cool. Some pretty cool moments as a result of that. But really overall, though, to not just constantly tease spoilery things, right? Like y'all have seen some of the art already, and I'm sure we'll share some images in game, in the coming weeks as we get closer to launch. But the art team, like I said, has just really outdone themselves. Like it is such a cool take on Manaan. It's a you'll see all the stuff you recognize, but in a completely different way, and the visuals of it and stuff that they did are just so stunning. Like I'm so proud to be working with such talented people, because it's very awesome. I think people will really enjoy exploring it. And we've got some really cool returning characters as part of the story. Like I'll tell you, like Arn is going to be there for Republic players, for example, on Manaan, will be a key character. But also a bunch of really new characters that have some very interesting stuff going on, and relationships and drama and everything that we love. So can't wait for y'all to meet him.
Pretty cool. And will we get Darth Rivix for the Empire? Or can't you say anything about it?
You will see some more Darth Rivix in 7.0. Not so much on Manaan, but he is part of the storyline for sure.
And with that, I want to thank you for the interview. Any last words, Charles, before we end the video?
No, just thank you so much for having me, and thanks everyone out there for playing and enjoying the game, because I have a lot of cats to feed, and I really appreciate it. I know everyone else on the team does too. We really love making it, so we love seeing y'all play it and give your feedback and enjoy it. And thank you so much. I was trying to think. I think was the last time we saw each other in person, was it Celebration Europe? Was that?
I think it was Celebration Europe. Like it must have been like London or Germany.
I think it was London. Yeah, it's been really cool, like getting to chat with you again and